Okay. Do you know if Peter's on yet?
Yes.
Where he is?
Easy.
Okay. All right, there he is. Okay, now I see him. Yeah, okay. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the July meeting, or June meeting rather, of the Zoning Board of Appeals. And we'll start off the meeting with a call to order.
David Bork,
Here.
Richard Silkman,
Here.
Rebecca Hatt,
Here.
Peter Freilinger, via Zoom, and Michelle Stevenson.
Here.
Peter, we didn't hear you. Are you,
He has his hand raised.
oh, he does? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Good enough.
Thank you. Peter, can you hear us okay?
Richard, can you hear me?
Oh, we can hear you
There we
now,
go.
Peter. Yep, you're good.
Okay, have I been added as a participant?
Yes.
I just added you.
Okay, that's what I was looking to do. Thank you.
Okay. Well, next item is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And when we jumped ahead, we've already done our roll call. For this meeting, Joe Doherty, who's normally a member, a voting member, is not going to be here. So that means, Rebecca, you are a voting member this evening. Okay. The zoning board, the procedure that we go through is that we have an agenda and we stick to that agenda. All of the information that we'll be discussing is available to the general public. It's available to all of you. If for any reason you don't have pieces of information and you would like to have it, it's online, or let us know. The general practice here is that when we have either an application or an appeal, we will hear from the applicant or the appellant. During that time, the board will ask questions. Once that process is done, we'll open it to public hearing, and people who are either here or online will have an opportunity to comment on the application or the appeal. Once we've heard from everybody, we'll close the public hearing, and at that point, the board will take the matter into consideration and deliberate, and we'll make a decision this evening on each of the appeals unless something comes up and for one reason or another it gets tabled, but that's an unlikely thing to occur. We have a fairly full agenda this evening. We'd like to get out of here in reasonable time, so I'll try to keep things moving along so that we can get to everybody's case that's on the agenda in front of us this evening. Okay. With that, the first item will be the approval of the minutes from the May meeting. Everybody has a copy. Everybody have a chance to read them. They were fairly extensive because it was a fairly long meeting, but thank you, Doreen, for capturing pretty much every word that was said. Can I have a motion to accept it?
Motion to approve.
Second? Okay, all in favor? All right. Peter, you good with the minutes?
Yep, raise my hand.
Okay, thank you. So the minutes are approved. The next item on the agenda is item 4.01. It's a decision of findings of fact for appeal number 2797. Everybody's had a chance to take a look through that. Are there any questions or comments on the written decision? Could I have a motion to accept the written decision as written?
So moved.
Thank you, Peter. Second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? Good.
Aye.
Fine. Good. 1-0. David was not here at that meeting, so he's abstaining from any discussion of these decisions. The next item is 4.02. That's a written decision for a shoreland setback determination to the greatest extent practical for 43 Clay Pits Road. Everybody have a chance to take a look through that? Are there any comments? I have a motion to accept that?
Motion to approve?
Thank you, Shelley. Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so through that, that's approved. The next item is appeal number 2798. This is a special exception for home occupation at 33 CV Landing Road, Unit B. Again, did everybody have a chance to go through that? Any comments or questions about it? Motion to approve it?
Motion to approve?
Thanks, Shelley.
Second.
Second, Peter, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Okay, that one passes as well. So thank you, Doreen, for putting those together. The next item on the agenda is a request to reconsider appeal number 2799, practical difficulty variance appeal by Jennifer Allen and Paul Johnson of 34 Westwood Avenue. We don't get many reconsiderations, and so I'm going to ask our staff here to just fill us in on how the process works for reconsiderations.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this reconsideration request is for Appeal 2799, which was denied 4-0 at the last meeting of this board. This was a practical difficulty variance for 34 Westwood Ave related to insufficient frontage for a lot split. In this case, with the request to reconsider, the board may vote to reconsider the appeal and make new findings at this meeting. For instance, if they feel an error was made in the prior review, or if new information has been presented in that request that the board feels merits review. If the board votes not to reconsider, it may move on and vote on the findings from the prior review, which are available and are the next agenda item. And if the board does vote to reconsider, then they would be discussing the merits of the appeal, perhaps creating new findings, and then voting on the appeal. So the process, if there are new findings, they would vote on those findings at the following meeting, like we would with a typical appeal. And deliberation on whether to reconsider, which is this agenda item, does not involve deliberation on the merits of the appeal necessarily. That would only be in the event that the board votes to reconsider it. So, but if you have any questions, please let us know. The applicant is available to introduce.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I've had the opportunity to review all the information on this particular appeal several times, and I do feel qualified to participate in this review. So I want to go on the record for that.
I'll do the same.
You're in the same position. Thank you, Rebecca. Okay. Do we have to have this moved and brought to us first, or should we just start with the hearing?
Well, Richard, could I ask maybe just a procedural question first?
Jump right in, Peter. Yes.
So we've got, if we vote not to reconsider, then the vote that we'll take is on the staff's fully edited findings of fact based on what we found as fact in the meeting. Am I getting that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I just wasn't sure if it's odd. If we vote not to reconsider, we vote again, but I understand what we're doing here, and that makes sense. So
Okay. Okay, so why don't we hear then from the applicant?
Thank you. Good evening. For the record, my name is Paul Johnson. I am here with Jennifer Allen, and we both own 34 Westwood Avenue. I want to start by thanking the board for hearing this request for reconsideration. I understand that this vote is not whether to grant the variance. The question right now at this moment is much more narrow. Whether there's enough reason for the board to take another look at the decision that occurred at last meeting. We're asking the board to reconsider because after reviewing the minutes that were just approved several minutes ago, the draft findings that have yet to be approved, the staff memos and emails that have occurred during this process, we believe that are specific reasons why the board's decision may have turned on interpretation of practical difficulty standard that deserves reconsideration. Our original request was not simply our preference for one development option over another. Staff identified a dimensional limitation to us. Scarborough staff identified why a private way option is not available to us. And Scarborough staff recommended that a practical difficulty variance was the appropriate path, as it was the only path for us. During last month's board discussion, several possible development alternatives were raised. One suggestion was that we could develop a second single-family residence on the same lot as it stands today and manage it as a multifamily lot. Scarborough staff's response to that was, quote, "The frontage requirements would still prevent that. That alternative was not possible. It was discussed, it was not possible." The meetings also reference LD 2173. For those of you that don't know, LD 2173 is a current law that is officially on the books in July of 2027. It was offered up as a possible future solution. But again, the Scarborough staff responded, quote, "Those other options do not currently exist. The law needs to be in place. The fact is, and I say this very respectfully, a future law that is enacted in 2027 should not be considered when looking at the issue and the question at hand." Another alternative raised was tearing down the existing home and building a much larger home. I understand why this was discussed, but I respectfully do not think the answer is an actual practical difficulty. The application was for relief from a frontage requirement. It was agreed upon that our current usage and the usage we want to use is allowable in the R4 zone. There shouldn't have been too much more discussion on the uses and permitted uses. The application was for frontage requirements so the property could be used in a way consistent with the historic lot patterns surrounding the neighborhood. The fact that we could demolish an existing home and build something 10,000 square feet does not address whether the frontage requirement, as applied here, creates a practical difficulty. Again, it's not the question that was before the board. The draft findings that you have yet to vote on, that are the next agenda item, also support why reconsideration is appropriate. The board found 4-0 that the need for the variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property. The board found 4-0 that granting the variance would not produce undesirable change in the neighborhood character, and it would have no unreasonable detrimental effect to the abutting properties. The board also found that 4-0, the practical difficulty was not the result of the current or previous owner, and the board found 4-0 that granting the variance would actually bring the property more nearly into conformance with the surrounding properties. And of course, 4-0, that they would not have an unreasonable adverse effect on the natural environment. Those findings matter. The board showed that they did not reject the overall character of the proposal. The board showed that the board accepted many of the core facts supporting the request. The denial appears to have turned mainly on two issues: hypothetical feasible alternatives and the definition of practical difficulty when it comes to economic injury. On economic injury, the draft findings that you have not voted on currently say, quote, "The lot is currently has a single-family dwelling and is being used in a manner for which it is permitted and zoned for. So long as the property continues to be used as a single-family home, it is difficult to determine how not granting the variance would create economic injury. I understand that concern, but I respectfully suggest that this may be much too narrow way to apply a practical difficulty standard. If the existence of one current conforming use is enough by itself to defeat a dimensional variance, then it becomes very difficult to imagine when practical difficulty variance could ever be applied to an already developed residential property." Please humor me as I state that last part again. If the existence of one conforming use is enough itself to defeat a dimensional variance, then it becomes very difficult to imagine when a practical difficulty variance could ever be applied to an already developed residential property. The email sent by Scarborough staff before this meeting also knows that according to the town's attorney, Phil Saucier, there is very little case law interpreting practical difficulty, including the term significant economic injury. It is not defined in our state statute. The email further states that significant economic injury standard is a less onerous standard than the undue standard in a typical general variance. The significant economic injury standard is a less onerous standard than the undue hardship standard, which requires showing a land cannot yield a reasonable return unless a variance is granted. That's an important distinction. We're not seeking a use variance. We're not arguing that the property has no value or no use at all. We are asking whether a dimensional standard as applied to a specific frontage condition contains a practical difficulty. The minutes that you've already approved also show that there was confusion during the discussion about item number 8 and how it fits into the practical difficulty analysis. The minutes note that staff asked for clarification where the requirement appears. And there was discussion about whether item 8 is a separate standard, part of a definition, or anything in between. This discussion alone supports reconsideration. If the board itself is working through how the standard should be applied while deliberating, then I think it's a reasonable ask of us to take another look at how the issue can be viewed more clearly. To reiterate, 1, some of the alternatives discussed are not available under the current ordinances. 2, the board appears to have treated the continued existence as a single-family home as determinative of both use and economic impact, even though the practical difficulty standard is less onerous than undue hardship. 3, there was discussion and uncertainty about item 8 and the definition of practical difficulty should be applied. And 4, the board already found in our favor for most of the core important criteria, including uniqueness, neighborhood character, self-created hardship, conforming with surrounding properties, and environmental impact. For those reasons, we respectfully ask the board to vote to reconsider the decision. If the board votes to reconsider and proceeds directly into a rehearing tonight, we are prepared to respond to variance criteria and the board's questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions? David?
Yes. In reviewing the notes from the meeting, I didn't really fully understand why you want to build a second home and subdivide the lot into 2 separate lots. Could you please address that?
I don't know if it's appropriate to address it here because I think the question is about the decision and whether the decision should be reconsidered. I'm happy to answer that, but I just think procedurally, it should be answered secondly. But I'll let staff know if I'm right or wrong.
I actually
hold on
for
procedure on
the
this. If you want to answer, go ahead. I wouldn't hold procedure.
Staff has some input.
I think you're allowed to provide additional.
Okay, all right, okay. I just didn't want to I didn't want to start arguing the merits, that's all. Can you ask
Yeah,
it again,
and
sir?
Richard, and actually for the appellant's benefit, sorry, I know I'm the voice of God here, and I apologize for how this comes down. I think the appellant actually is taking the right approach here. I think we probably need to decide whether the case has been made for reconsideration before we go and look at the other facts. I think you're right on that one. Richard, I don't know how you feel about that one, but it strikes me that would be a kind of reopening of the facts rather than a discussion of reconsideration.
Well, I think because didn't David ask the question and wasn't here, it's hard to get the full sense of the case from reading the minutes and watching the video. And so I think for the, for this clarification purpose, that might be useful. So
I would agree with that, but that's really, and I don't want to argue the appellant's case here, but that's an argument for reopening the case. That there are only 4 members present, and that members who are now here today may wish to hear it reheard because they don't feel that the record fully supports not reopening the case. Does that make sense?
I could go either way with it. Staff have any opinion on this? And then Rebecca?
I would lean on the applicant being able to at least provide some context or describe what the request is without going into too much detail on the arguments or the standards themselves, especially as David wasn't here. I think a brief response would be merited in this case.
Not discussing standards here at all.
Yep.
This is strictly a question about why subdivide and why a second home. I'd just like to know, why are you doing this?
Yeah, my co-applicant, Jen Allen, lived at the property for 10 years as a renter. The owner of the property died. She negotiated a sale with the estate of the property. She was unable to buy the property on her own. Her and I bought the property together from the estate. And the intention is for us to subdivide the property and for me to build next door on the lot that you would see.
Oh, I see.
Yep.
So you would be living separately.
We live, yes, as much as we want to live in the house together, I'm married. Yeah,
Right, that-
yeah.
No, I completely
But
understand.
that's the genesis of it,
But
yeah.
it provides me with the context
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
really helps me to be able to see the whole big picture more clearly. Because
Becky,
it wasn't clear in the notes at all.
Becky, you have a question or comment?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify, if we do choose to reopen this, are we able to reschedule it, the rehearing to a later date after potentially getting more clarification on the standards in a workshop or something like that with the town attorney?
I think we have some flexibility in terms of when we would want to schedule it. We could table it, for instance, to a later date, next meeting, if we wanted to do that. Are there any other questions or comments for the appellant?
I just want to add one piece of context. I believe it's, for reconsiderations, they have to be heard within 45 days of the initial decision. Do I have that right? So tabling might present an issue on that front for their case.
Helen, if we vote to reconsider, but then table the reconsideration, wouldn't the 45-day window start with today's vote?
I'll have to check the standard. I'm not.
Yeah, we'll have to do some recon as you all deliberate, I would say.
I would like to make just a general comment. This board, just for anybody watching and the audience, we are a group of non-legal volunteers. So it is very common for us to frequently ask staff for guidance on some of these things, and we try to do our best. But, you know, deliberating while we're hearing cases, because every case is unique, is not an uncommon thing for us to do. So I just wanted to kind of address that. There were a couple other things in there I wanted to address, but they're kind of escaping me now. But I don't know what this is actually the first time we've ever heard that since I've been on the board to reconsider. So I don't know what we do next. Do we need to deliberate amongst ourselves?
We have to make a decision as to whether or not we want to accept the motion for reconsideration. So that's where we are now in the process. And so we are deliberating among ourselves as to whether or not to go forward on that.
I don't know.
We're not
For-
voting yet, so.
Yeah,
this is-
no, I know. I'm just saying, I was, sorry, I did have it and then I lost it again.
Okay.
You know, I think that I'm not sure that I'm in favor of rehearing the consideration. We have to meet every single standard and they just weren't met. I know that we've had some discussions about what the standard that they didn't meet, you know, what that means, how we interpret it, but I don't feel that the presentation of significant economic injury was there. And I don't know if that's a lack of them getting guidance ahead of time or, you know, just the presentation of it, but I didn't see it. And they're gonna, if we reconsider it, it's gotta be good. If for a vote for me, that's just where I stand right now.
Okay, thank you. Rebecca?
I did want to point out as well, I know some reference was made to undue hardship. An undue hardship, at least my understanding of it, the court precedent is typically that it means no economic value of the lot as a whole, not necessarily reduced economic value or no economic value of some portion of the lot. It is my understanding, again, is that it's no economic value of the lot as a whole. Is that in line with?
Can I just clarify? So the undue hardship standard is part of the standard variance. This is not that.
Yes,
So,
understood.
yeah, making sure we're on the
Understood.
same
I
page.
pointed out only because there was reference made to that as sort of the benchmark and then this being less onerous than that. And I think that's totally true. However, less onerous than that is a very wide window, right? There's a huge spectrum of possibilities as to how that could be interpreted. And I don't think we have a current ordinance that delves into how the town has chosen to interpret that or any case law in point that would give a firm answer.
That seems to be the case.
I do also want to say that when we heard this case, the reason we were throwing out ideas about feasibility was because we heard a lack of evidence for feasibility, if it was feasible for the appellant.
Yeah,
So that's why those were brought up, because
I think
we
that's.
weren't getting much
Yeah.
in them addressing that standard, and you have to have both of those things.
No, I think that's a good point. I mean, the applicant listed a few things that were in the minutes, but I think in the context in which they were raised were not part of the decision criteria that the board relied on. They were hypotheticals for consideration. They weren't decisions that we were saying, well, you could do this, you could do that as part of the underlying decision. They were just, these are things that could happen on the property. With respect to the law, that was raised as a question. And obviously it was decided that that law wouldn't be in effect at this time, and so that couldn't apply. I think the fundamental issue that we were dealing with was whether or not the granting of the variance was necessary to prevent an economic harm. And the property would continue to exist in its current form. There would still be a house on it. That house would still be occupied. There would be
Can-
no loss of economic value associated with
Can
that.
I bring you back to the action at hand, though? It is really to reconsider, to have this conversation. So in the applicant's information, they resubmitted some more information for you to look at, and you all are sort of making a case that they didn't present information. But the question, this first item to consider is if you want to reconsider it or not, if adequate additional information has been provided, without making judgment on what has been provided, if it sways your decision or not. It's just if additional information has been presented that you all think is valid to reconsider.
And that's what I was going through his presentation, I view as additional information that he offered.
Yes.
And what I was going through was saying, I don't think there really was any additional information, and the information that was offered for the purpose that it was being offered was not correct. That wasn't what we were dealing with, that didn't influence any of our decision in the discussions. Peter, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I do. I have a couple. First off, with this, what we're talking about right now, I worry about a slippery slope where we make decisions or we approve or deny appellants based on the information provided in the appeal and our ability to determine fact. The appellant decides that, oops, we forgot the following XYZ, so we're going to request to reconsider to add additional facts. That's not how the appeals process works. You get your chance to present facts. If we get the facts wrong and you believe that our facts based on your original case were wrong, I get why you might want to ask us to reconsider the facts. I don't get the idea that we would consider based on new information that you didn't make available and had the ability to make available in the original appeals application. And I feel that we might be getting in that zone. The second piece is, and it relates to this discussion we had on what is item 8 in our appeal. I think we were responding as a board saying that we have to have an item 8 based on the language of the state statute. Whereas staff had said there is no 8th question that we consider. They're right. There were 7 items in the state statute that have to be considered, but there is an explanatory 8th item which is not separately enumerated, which nevertheless, under any normal interpretation of a statute, would require us to make a determination. So I don't think we as a board had any confusion on item 8. And I think that was established fairly quickly as we look at the minutes, and particularly if one reviews the video, the recorded session online.
Thank you, Peter.
So I before we go into consideration, I think we've said a lot. I'd also ask, do we have public hearing? Do we? And this is both a question and maybe a question of the audience. Is there public input on this type of a thing?
I wouldn't know what the public could present. So no, we don't have anybody here, and I don't think we would accept public.
They would not
Okay,
understand.
yeah, and Richard, it literally is an upward inflection question. I don't know, so
Yeah.
thank you.
Rebecca, you have one question, then Helen, jump in.
I do. I was curious, and I'll rely on input on this. If there is a facet of this that we would be interested in reconsidering, but it would not necessarily change the outcome, would we still move forward with a yes vote on reconsideration or no?
I can help answer that. And just to address an earlier point, I just want to clarify that state statute does allow this type of request, a request to reconsider. It's not setting a precedent for an applicant to request the board to reconsider. And as we've all, or many of us have addressed tonight, this is a rare case. It doesn't happen very frequently. So I would just want to flag that as that this is part of the overall kind of process landscape for a zoning board. And in terms of updated findings, if the board does vote to reconsider, it does not mean they have to change their findings. They can rehear it and still determine that the criteria are not met in whole. It would be a new set of findings that would be formally adopted at the following meeting, just like a normal appeal. But by voting to reconsider, you're not committing to finding. It's technically a new set of findings. You don't have to say yes if you reconsider, and you don't have to reconsider. This is just a vote on whether you feel reconsideration is merited in this case.
One of the other items that the applicant has indicated as part of the motion to reconsider is that the board either didn't interpret correctly or misinterpreted the standard about significant economic impact. Personally, I don't think we did. I think we spent an awful lot of time on that issue. I think we decided that the ability to do something beyond the current use and the inability to allow something to occur was not the denial of an economic, denial of something that would provide significant economic harm. So I don't think that that information that the appellant has brought to us is correct.
And I would agree with that, Richard. I'd like to say that I share that view, and in fact, we talked about the point that the appellant made, which is, a practical difficulty variance for a request on a property that is occupied, is in good shape, that for example doesn't need the variance in order to and I'll throw out an example, to meet current fire code to be able to be saleable at current market conditions, and therefore would require a haircut. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about, do we create economic harm by not approving the variance? And we don't. We change the opportunity value or the potential value, future value of the property, but we don't affect the current economic value of the property. And that's kind of what we came up as a discussion point. We all acknowledge that we're not destroying the economic value at all. That was never kind of in the cards. But we're not affecting the economic value of the property as it currently stands. And that does make it difficult to approve a practical difficulty variance.
Sorry, I have to stop you, Peter. We're not discussing the economic harm right now. We're discussing the request for reconsideration in order to then discuss whether there's economic harm. So
no, I understand that, but the appellant is raising that as an issue that we misinterpreted, and therefore it gives rise to the need to reconsider. I'm saying no, we didn't. That's an incorrect interpretation of the minutes and the actions that we took at the last meeting.
I would just encourage more detailed discussion of the appeal to take place if the board decides to reconsider the appeal.
Okay. David, and then
Yes.
Rebecca.
Okay, I have not heard any new evidence at all tonight from the appellant. The appellant basically went through all the criteria and, said which ones are yes, which ones were no. Fact is, if any criterion receives a no vote, that means we must vote no on the project.
Yep.
2 of them received no votes, and for good reason, particularly number 4. That's very easy to point out. you didn't consider alternatives. And what we're used to as a board on these kinds of appeals is for an applicant to come in and to present different alternatives, and explain to us why they chose the one they did and why a variance is needed.
Can I,
Because
can I,
and I don't want to get into
I'm-
No,
details here
but
about that.
I think their staff is shaking, so
Yeah.
we'll stop at that.
Thank
Becca,
you.
you have a question?
I know, but
Yes.
we're
He's
here
getting it.
listening for evidence.
And
we didn't get it.
What we're doing is, it's really more of a formality, and we could have accepted the motion, had the discussion, and then denied it, right? And maybe that would have been the correct way of doing it. But we're into this process now, so assume for a moment that we've already accepted the motion to reconsider.
I
No,
would
that choice.
I would encourage the board to accept
All
the
right, let's,
motion if they're going to go
let's,
ahead and discuss.
fair
it.
enough. Let's put the motion in front of us so that we can have this discussion. That's the procedural issue that you're concerned about. So.
And
could I have
Richard,
a
that's why I
motion-
asked about, is there a public comment on this? Because if public comment is not part of it, I'm ready to move that
Let's put it in front of us first, Peter. David?
Yes, motion to approve the request to reconsider.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
A second. All in favor? Aye.
I can vote.
Yep, you're okay. Peter, are you okay with that? Yes?
No, I'm voting no.
Well, no, this is not to approve. This is to put it in front of us so that we can then vote to say yes or no.
Okay, this might get back to my original question on procedure. I think there's a motion to, I actually don't know how the motions work, Richard, and I apologize. This is purely procedural. I am confused with respect to procedure.
It's purely procedural. There's a motion on the table to consider the motion for reconsideration.
Because it's an agenda item, I would suggest there is public comment before a motion is made. I'm could have that wrong.
I don't
but
think
just
that it would hurt anything.
Right,
All right,
yeah, I would just, again, procedurally, public comment,
Yeah.
and then deliberation and a vote.
And again, Richard, staff, I'm sorry on this one. This is new for us, and I'm
Yeah.
confused. So it's all about procedure.
yep, okay. Is there anybody from the public who would like to speak on this issue? I'll open it up now for public comment.
am I allowed to use 3 minutes? I think I am.
No, you've already given your speech. We're done with you. Anybody else would like to speak? Okay. All right, hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. And now we can have the motion in front of us now to decide whether or not to reconsider. So the motion that, David, could you make that motion again?
Motion to reconsider.
Okay, can I have a second to that? Second from Rebecca. All those in favor, say aye. Raise your hand.
Should we do a call on this or?
Well, it's just to have it in front of us. It's not the actual decision.
It's an action item. I would do a roll call vote as an action item. Please, Doreen.
Rebecca
So
Hack?
if I could get some clarity here, if we vote yes on this, what happens? If we vote no on this, what happens? Because I'm not clear.
You are only voting to reconsider the item at this time. If you vote to reconsider it, you'll move on to your next agenda item where you have draft findings. You may simply say, we like these findings and we're going to vote on those. Or you may have further discussion and allow the applicant to speak more. Or you may change your mind and say, we don't like these findings, we'd like to reverse them.
Is that clear to folks? Because it is confusing. All right, so if we vote yes, what we then do is say, okay, we are now reconsidering. At that point, we can say we deny the reconsideration.
And I just want to.
So, yeah,
Go ahead.
the town's attorney did say that after a vote to reconsider, that the appellant would have another chance to make their case as if it were the first time the board was seeing it. So essentially, a vote to reconsider erases the previous decision.
So if we vote no, then it ends, done. Reconsideration is denied, even though we haven't voted yet to accept it as an item on our agenda.
Just one point of clarification here. Aaron's already made this point in writing. If we vote yes, that means it's a de novo appeal. Like, we have to go through this in its entirety. Okay, all right? That's the only way we can do this. We
All
can't
right.
just simply say, okay, we move on to a second vote to yes or no. So, yeah, so keep that in mind.
And Richard, if we vote no, we're not going to hear a reconsideration. Then we do move on to the agenda item, which is, do we approve the staff's interpretations of findings of fact that we voted on last meeting?
Okay.
Correct.
All right. So
Okay.
Is that
Okay.
clear now to folks? It's finally clear to me. So,
Yep.
all right. So now,
I think we were at the point of having a roll call on the
Yes.
motion to reconsider.
on the motion to reconsider. Okay. Doreen, could you call the roll?
Rebecca Hatt,
Yes.
Richard Silkman,
No.
David Bork,
No,
Michelle Stevenson,
No.
and Peter Freilinger.
No.
Okay, it fails 4-1. Okay, so that's now, motion to reconsider is now done.
Mr. Silkwood, I would advise you to, and I don't know if staff does this, but when something like this happens, they do have an appeal process that they can go through. So do you want to deal with that now or at some point?
I don't-
There's already an active appeal that's been made for this.
Pardon?
There's already been an active official appeal made for
That's
this.
been filed
Correct.
with the court?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
All right, moving on. We are now on item 4.05, which is to consider the written decision for the appeal that we just denied the reconsideration on, which is 2799, the practical difficulty variance appeal 34 Westwood Avenue. We've had this discussion, so was there any other questions or comments about the written decision? Hearing none, could I have a motion to accept the written findings?
So moved.
David, seconded?
I'll second that.
Second, Shelley? On this one, do we need a roll call or can we good enough on show of hands, Doreen? All those in favor?
You need a roll call for Peter to be on Zoom.
All right.
Oh, God, I raised my hand, but I vote yes.
Well, we'll go through the roll call, Doreen. So
Okay,
we'll-
sorry, apologize.
Yep, no, it's good.
Doreen.
Yep, Rebecca Hatt,
No.
Richard Silkman,
Yes.
David Bork,
Yes.
Michelle Stevenson.
Yes.
And Peter Freilinger.
Yes.
Okay, 4-1, that it's, oh, the written findings are approved. Okay, that takes us now to item 4.06, which is appeal number 2800, a variance appeal by Peter and Elizabeth Gordon of 16 Garrison Lane.
May I use the
Sure.
item? Thank you. So as you mentioned, this is a standard hardship variance for 16 Garrison Lane. The property is in the R2 district and the variance is being sought in order to allow the renovation of unfinished attic space, converting it into habitable space. The reason for this is the roof of the portion that's proposed to be renovated has to be raised approximately 5.5 feet to provide code compliant interior height. This is a legally existing non-conforming structure, so it must receive a variance in order to be enlarged in any way as is proposed per section 3 of the ordinance. We have the appeal standards available for your reference in your packet as well, and the applicant is available.
Okay, would you like to introduce yourself and please begin?
Good evening. Thank you for considering our application. My name is Devin Connell. I'm a local architect and I'm representing the Gordons here. The property at 16 Garrison Lane contains a single-family home originally constructed in 1935. The structure is legally non-conforming and encroaches into multiple required setbacks that substantially limit the ability to improve the dwelling under current zoning standards. The proposed project includes a modest roof modification to improve the functionality of the existing structure. It addresses longstanding roof drainage, rot, and ice damming issues and creates a code-compliant living space within the existing building envelope. No expansion of the footprint is proposed, no additional encroachment into setbacks is proposed, and lot coverage will remain unchanged. The Gordons have explored alternatives to avoid the need for a variance. However, because of the structure's location on the lot, the limited buildable area available outside the setbacks and the property's floodplain constraints, There is no practical means of achieving these improvements without substantial reconstruction of the home. Bringing the structure into compliance through elevation changes, raising the house, would require raising the house approximately 4 feet and undertaking significantly reconstruction at an estimated cost of roughly $500,000 before proposed renovation itself could even begin. They had a local engineer and builder take a look at it to review that. We believe the hardship arises from the unique placement of the pre-existing structure and not from any action of the current owner. The proposal represents the minimum relief necessary to reasonably improve and maintain the home while preserving the existing character of the neighborhood and avoiding any increase in the existing nonconformities. We respectfully request approval of the variance.
Does anybody have any questions before we go through the standards and whether or not they've been met?
Yes, sir. You are the owner of the property or?
Sorry,
representing-
I'm an architect. The Gordons are the owners of the
I
property.
see. Okay. But it's not listed on the application.
Yeah, apologies. I was busy when they were making the application.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Peter, are you okay? We go through the standards?
I'm ready to go through the standards, yeah.
Okay. What I'm going to ask you to do, just to put it into the record, is respond to each of the standards that must be met in order to grant the variance.
Sure.
They were included in your application, so we'll just go through those now. The first question is the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless the variance is granted.
Strict application of the ordinance prevents any meaningful improvement. The attic cannot be used as habitable space due to the insufficient head height and code limitations, and no feasible alternative exists. The existing roof lines, sorry, I haven't included this on the application. I hope that's okay, but the existing roof lines have created ice damming issues and rotting issues where, you know, a gable roof is meeting a wall. And so to raise the roof of just this portion of the house would create two valleys and would really improve, you know, those issues that they've been having. And without being able to do that, you know, they'll continue to have to repair this rot issue that they've been running into. Denial would preclude reasonable use of a substantial portion of the dwelling and materially diminish the property's value relative to similarly situated homes. The adjacent properties all surrounding them are on average 300 square feet larger than the house. So it wouldn't be out of character to raise that roof.
Is the current home occupied now?
Yes.
So there's nothing that limits the ability to continue to occupy the home as it's currently being occupied?
No, it can continue to exist, but the issue is whether the property can reasonably be improved and maintained.
Well, it's,
No, actually, that's not really what this question asks. So let me ask the question a different way. If the house were torn down, is there a buildable envelope on the property using a strict application of the ordinance that could be utilized to build a home with value?
If you take a look at the site plan, I don't know if you have it available in front of you. If we were to abide by the setbacks, there's a buildable window of about 15 feet deep by 70 feet wide. It's really quite small.
Okay, because I just want to be clear, that's the standard for a variance, a general variance. It's not that you're maximizing or utilizing the property such as other properties. It's if we applied strictly the standards of our zoning code, you would be unable to yield an economic return on the property. So what you're saying is, and I got to think about a 15 by 70 property that might be there are ADUs that are wide, that are 15 feet wide. You could probably place one units on the or buildings on the property that would be livable if you apply the strict standards of the property, and therefore by livable, therefore saleable and able to yield an economic return.
Mm-hmm. I guess, you know, if we were to raise this the house, we wouldn't have to apply for this variance if I'm understanding everything correctly. But to raise the house would be $500,000 and would probably pull it more out of character with the other houses in the neighborhood. I mean, adding 4 feet to you can see the stairs on the front of the house there, like adding 4 feet to that, okay, now it's running into the driveway. 4 feet to both the stairs on the patio, that's 7 steps, 4 feet to the back deck. I just want to confirm that if we aren't able to do this, the board is suggesting that we are better off doing that than giving us the ability to raise the roof by 5.5 feet.
No, our hands are tied by the language of state land use law. If the property can be built upon and utilize an economic return in strict conformance of the standards that exist for this zone, then we don't have really an option. We hear you, we understand where you're coming from, but the state tells us that we can't grant this type of a variance. If there's a buildable envelope on this property that could have buildings that would yield an economic return to the owner.
David, you have a question or comment?
Yeah. While the footprint isn't being changed at all, you are increasing the height, which is not permitted in this particular type of variance.
I have a
So
clarification on that point when you're ready.
go ahead.
So the overall height of the structure isn't being changed. It's the portion of the structure, as you mentioned, that roof line is lower than the overall height, but the overall height is not being changed, which is why the enlargement would be
Okay.
Potentially permitted.
All right. So the other point I would make is that the house is currently occupied and is being used. So the property is yielding some return. Okay. And what you're proposing is to spend more money, but it's already achieving return. This particular variance says it's not maximum return. Okay, it's some return, and it's already doing that. There are plenty of like beachfront properties and so forth that are undeveloped, and people come to us saying that, well, I want to build this gorgeous house there and whatever, but because of shoreline zoning, we can't do that. Because they could very easily put something much smaller there, even a park bench or a boat ramp or something. And that would be reasonable return.
Well,
So those are,
Another point of clarification, just quickly, for the record, this is not in the shoreland zone. It's
I
limited
know,
by.
but it's in a flood hazard area.
yeah.
Okay.
And in fact, if it was in the shoreline zone, my understanding of it would be that we could expand upwards and not outwards. And so hypothetically, the neighbors a few doors down who are, encroaching further into the setback, are closer to the floodplain, but happen to be in the shoreline zone, could achieve this renovation.
It is a perverse outcome of the shoreland ordinance, but that is what it is. And fortunately or unfortunately, this property is not in the shoreland zone.
Yes. But it
And
is a
one more
flood
point on that
hazard.
is, just so I'm understanding this correctly, it's a reasonable return. And to my understanding of that, it's up
No,
to you
it's
to,
not that. It's no return.
it says the land in
No,
question
no,
cannot
no,
yield
no.
a reasonable
It's
return.
reasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, so it's up to you to decide what's reasonable and what's not.
Definition of reasonable is probably not stated anywhere.
No, of course not.
No, but this does have some at least in the MMA classes, this does have some case law that we have looked at in the past, and actually the comment that David made about using this as boat storage is applicable here. Using this to rent it out as boat storage would be a reasonable economic return and has been viewed as such
It's
by
not
the
an
state.
allowed use. I have
Yeah.
to.
Well, okay,
stop.
No, it's just hypothetical. I mean.
yeah, exactly. My point would be more on point than Autumn, which is, could you locate a couple of ADUs on this property?
No, an accessory dwelling unit has to have a primary home. Could they put a 15-foot by, I think it's 70-foot structure and raise it to meet the floodplain elevation, yes. But you all, your job is not to come up with every alternative. It is to determine if it's a feasible alternative and if they lose some level of value. I think we're losing sight of going down rabbit holes of trying to come up with, you can do all sorts of things with it. You have to look at what they're asking you for as it pertains to that particular case and particular application.
Well, I appreciate that, but we've seen a house constructed in our town. I can't remember what the variance requirement was, on 15-foot stilts or 10-foot stilts with roughly a 15-foot width on Winnick's Neck. In fact, it's being built right now. I was down there the other day. So it's feasible. People seem to not dislike those houses. And again, feasible is a pretty big standard. It's a pretty big word.
Yeah, I think that if we look at the standard, I mean, and we're getting, we're sort of circling around the notion here that we're dealing with, but it says the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless the variance is granted. And the land is yielding a return, somebody's living on it. The question is that reasonable? And, that's what the zoning allows. I mean, it's hard to step in our capacity and override the zoning ordinance. I mean, that's put in place by elected officials, and they, that's their job, is to put in place zoning standards. Our job is only to interpret them. We're not supposed to change them, and we shouldn't rely on or refer back to the original zoning ordinances to begin with. Rebecca?
I'm just curious, for my knowledge, when we talk about no economic value, I'm aware of where that standard comes from, and it's generally talking about regulatory takings, which means essentially that like you've regulated this property to the point that there's no value. I understand that we're talking about that standard. I'm wondering how strictly we're
But
held
we're
to
not
that.
talking about that standard in this instance. That would be the undue hardship standard.
Right.
Right.
So I guess my thinking on this is that I'm hesitant to functionally say that the homeowners need to have a sick house forever. So I'm wondering, yeah.
Do they have to have a sick house, or could they just have a
They
house
could not
without?
do anything,
Well,
and it's still a reasonable return right now. It's the other problem. Can we move through the application then deliberate?
Well, I thought it would be easy to go through. There's like 4 standards, and that
I know,
we know
well-
we're on the standard. and
Okay.
then That was my thinking on it.
Yep.
So we could certainly go through each one of them, but then we have to
Well,
go back over them again
This
to talk
poor
about.
man's still standing up here. I just wanted
Yeah,
to.
I don't mind.
he's young.
Uh,
You had something
so-
you wanted to.
So we go through all 4 and then you vote? Is that?
Yeah, just stay up.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, yeah.
All right, anything else on number 1? All right, number 2 says the need for the variance is due to the unique circumstance of the property.
The hardship is due to the structure's pre-existing non-conforming location, circa 1935, which encroaches into multiple setbacks and leaves no compliant area on the lot for expansion or reconfiguration. The property's location in flood zone AE 14 further limits feasible alternatives, reinforcing that vertical modification is the only reasonable option.
Are there any questions of the applicant on this standard?
I've got one.
You have one, Peter?
Yeah, part of this is, and they've presented information on their property. Are other properties in the area also? They're probably also in the flood zone, right?
Yeah.
And my guess is that, and I guess I'm guessing, but would you be able to assert the other properties in the area were also built at a similar time frame with similar sort of lot sizes, et cetera?
Several of them are, yes, not across the board.
Okay. And just for your reference as a representative of the owner, it's helpful for us as a board if you present evidence, photographs, tax lot indicators, things like that, that can demonstrate that this is not unique. So we're relying on your assertions here and our knowledge of the neighborhood. But if you ever come to us in the future, just some evidence would be helpful for us to understand this.
Understood.
The third standard is the granting of the variance will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood.
No change to footprint, lot coverage, or setback encroachment is proposed. The roof modification is subordinate to the existing structure and remains below the primary ridge. The proposed dormers will match the scale, form, and detailing of the existing house. The use remains single-family and consistent with the neighborhood.
Are there any questions or comments on this standard? The fourth standard is the hardship is not the result of action taken by the applicant or a prior owner of the property.
The nonconformity predates current zoning and is not the result of the applicant's actions. The proposal improves the structure without increasing nonconformity.
Are there any questions now of the applicant before I open it to public comment? Peter, do you have any questions or comments?
Nope, not here.
We're done with you for now. Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak on this, either here or online? I would have rather you've done it with the applicant because you are sort of the applicant in this instance. But if there's something that you want to say, please make it brief and we'll move along.
I think the term, my name is Libby Gordon. I think the term sick house is a very useful one. This house had so much rot from this eave that we had to tear down whole walls, replace the whole, exterior wall, interior wall, and the corner. And that was only 6 years ago. We already have new rot. It's something that we're trying to prevent. We're trying to prevent a sick house. We're trying to prevent bringing mold into the house to live with it. We're only raising one part of the house to be at the same height as the other part of the house. We're not changing any sunlight going into the neighboring houses. We're not changing the neighborhood in any way. We're not changing the house in any way other than to prevent rot. Now, because we can raise that up, there's a possibility we could add more space, but we're not going for that. We're going for the allowance for us to have a house to live in that will not have continued rot and continued need for repair. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Is there any other member of the public? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and we can begin deliberation on what we have in front of us. Anybody want to start us off? Rebecca?
Considering the economic usefulness and the reasonable return standard here, personally, it's important to me that the house can't be kept in good repair without a change to the structure. I understand that that's not the way this standard has been interpreted by this zoning board in the past. And if the town attorney has said that that's the line, please let me know. But falling short of that, I would like to believe that there is a clear economic impact that's been supported here, particularly if they've tried to remedy the issue in the past and were unable to do so without changing the height of that section of the roof.
So I would agree with you for the most part, other than I feel for the appellants wanting to do the right thing by this house. This particular, number one, this standard about reasonable return, it's not there for me. We didn't see that evidence. That's what, they didn't show us rot. They didn't show us pictures. So, we didn't hear any of that until the end, and they didn't give us estimates. There's no real evidence that was presented to say, if you don't fix this and raise this roof, this is going to have virtually no value. So that's where I think I'm 2, 3, and 4 are reasonable to say that they've met those standards, but the first one's a tough one for me.
David?
Yeah, this was always tough, and I can recall several variance, undue hardship variances in the past where we have voted in favor of the appellate, even though this question about reasonable return was in question. Because, and in fact, we had an attorney who was presenting on behalf of the appellate. Specifically said that you have to consider, and this is for shoreland property, okay, that was there, and they wanted to raise it, build a new one. And maybe you recall that. But the appellant attorney stated you have to look at this as both sides of the coin. You know, one side of the coin is, okay, there's no hardship right now. But the other side of the coin is, let's say we have a real bad storm, it comes here, wipes out the house, and the house is floating away and bumps into the house right next to it. That creates a lot of harm, not only to the existing property, but also to other homes which may be right. I know that's, you know, but the attorney did show photos of, you know, where that actually happened out in Saco. And again, I think, let's go back to the previous comments. That's the kind of evidence we need, you know, in order to be able to understand, well, what's the other side here? If we say no to this, then that restricts the appellant to continuing to making repairs to this home and continuing to sinking money into a property that's in bad shape. And, you know, simply raising the roof in that portion where it's lower, and I didn't catch this until you came up, ma'am, but you're simply raising the portion, that portion of the roof, which is lower than the other portion, up to the same height, okay? Now, okay, that means to me that it's not really raising the entire, it's not a complete raising of the roof. It's just that particular portion of the roof. I'm now seeing that there may be room here for us to make an exception and to be able to show that the flip side on this, the economic impact of continuing to do maintenance over and over again is causing harm to the applicant. And, you know, and as opposed to that, by enabling them to go in and do this right and fix everything, okay, which is going to be costly, upfront cost, but at least now they have a home that's livable.
That would be great, David, but they didn't show any evidence to suggest there's no receipts, there's no estimates. They did not present enough evidence for me to say that this house is in disrepair. We didn't even know until she got up that the house, part of it was rotting.
I don't think that's true. There's a licensed architect that they've brought in, and he's saying that in his professional opinion, they're going to continue to have ice damming and rot issues if they're not able to do this. I think that's what.
But
we
that
would
also
expect for
needs to
proof.
then show that it's gonna cost more that it's gonna be completely, the value is gonna be almost zero if they continue to have rot. And then we can't say like, oh yeah, so every house in 100 years could potentially be like that. But
But
I don't know, where does that, this is going down like a,
And
I
once
don't
we-
know, I don't think enough.
And
was
once we
presented.
start down that path, I think then the issue of alternatives, I mean, is it possible to put electric coils to get rid of the ice dams? I mean, a lot of houses in Maine have electric.
And do not get
coils.
me wrong, I think this is a great thing you're trying to do to this house, but we just heard a case where we had to be very strict on the facts. And that first standard, if we're going by that, we can't, it's not there.
It's tough. Peter, do you have any comments or questions on this?
Yeah. I'm inclined to agree with Michelle and maybe state it a little differently, but I find it odd that there is only one solution that fixes both the rot problem, but then also offers more livable space. I don't think we've had enough evidence presented that a non-variance potential solution existed. If the problem really is rot in this space, then what about ventilation solutions? What about electric coil to deal with the ice damming issues? What about changes to or enhancements to internal drainage? Um, you know, what are the non-variance required maintenance or improvements or engineering adjustments that that aren't necessarily architectural per se, they're engineering, but that could have been considered. We kind of went straight to raise the roof line, get some attic space to be able to inhabit, and as we're doing that, we will solve these other rotting issues. Okay, I get that, but I don't see where I don't understand how a non-variant solution couldn't exist, and I don't think the appellant has established at all that they've gone down the pathway of saying we've looked at those options. So that's what I struggle with on this one.
Thank you,
I agree
Peter.
with Shelley as well that 2, 3, 4 are almost. Yep, you're right. You're all set. But on this first one, I don't have the evidence at hand, and we can't create the fact patterns ourselves. We have to rely on the fact patterns shown to us by the appellant, and they haven't shown us that fact pattern that would allow us to agree with this standard being met.
Just for a point of clarification and for the record, I want to make it clear, the question of feasible alternative is not how the criteria is framed. It's framed around a reasonable return, and I understand that there's nuance there, but I wanted to say that for the sake of the record, that this is not a feasible alternative criteria.
No, I'm not saying that either. I'm saying that, but there is a strict application of the ordinance, which means that a repair solution that would not require coming to the board for a variance would presumably be a strict application of the ordinance, because obviously they wouldn't be coming for a variance as a result. We've heard
it is tricky. I mean, the standard is that the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless the variance is granted. And what does cannot mean in this context? Couldn't, I assume, could include alternatives. So they sort of wiggle their way in through the cannot part of the sentence. But it isn't like the other ones where we have that, are there alternatives? We actually have to find there are no alternatives.
Well, Richard, the other thing they have looked at and pursued some things that were clearly within the strict application of the ordinance, because they didn't need to come to us for a variance request, but did involve, as they said, I think they worked on redoing some of the corner work, and I'd have to go back to the minutes to go to what the owner had referred to, but they've again, I just don't see. Maybe it doesn't exist, but they didn't establish it. That they could have fixed the sick building problem, which they're now claiming is the primary issue, without having to come to us with a variance.
I just wanted to add.
No, you don't get to do that now.
Oh, pardon me.
Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, David.
I think he deserves the opportunity to present more facts.
But we're not in that.
I know we're not, okay, but I just think that, we should give him that opportunity, because it might make a difference in how we see things.
I don't know that we can do that now that we're
Yeah, we
in
can do
that
anything we want.
phase. Okay.
That's, whether the courts in the end decide we did it right or wrong, that's their decision, but we can do anything we want.
I'm fine if he wants to say something.
All right, I guess you have approval to step up. Please make it quick.
I wanted to add that, I'm not the most experienced with these things, and we do have photos of rot. They're on his phone. I assume that's not helpful at this moment. Also, I also assumed that we would have the drawings kind of opened up, and you could see where we're trying to raise the roof, just for clarification there. And there's also photos of the neighborhood, if that's helpful. It doesn't seem like it is at this moment. There are other solutions that we could look into, as far as heating the roof to melt the ice, and repairing that cheek wall is also an option. But I guess, is that reasonable, and is this not a more reasonable solution, is what I would ask.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Richard,
Can I suggest one?
Sure. Hold on a second, Peter.
Just to mention what the options would be in this case, the board does have the option to table if they feel that they'd like to revisit this at the next meeting. given what's been discussed thus far.
Yeah, actually, interestingly, Helen, that's exactly what I was going to say. The crux of this on my issue is I don't think we've seen enough evidence. I don't think the appellant has given us enough of a case to confidently rule one to say one way or the other on this item one. And I would be comfortable tabling this and giving them an opportunity to come back with evidence and with a more fully constructed case. Having heard already from us what facts and we would need established to be in a comfortable position to view criteria number one as having been met.
I would also be fine with tabling that. Before we do that, I would like to read this out loud so that the appellant, if they come back, needs to take this into consideration. The land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless this variance is granted. Reasonable return does not mean maximum return, but you must demonstrate a practical loss of virtually all reasonable use of the land if the variance is not granted. So that's what you're up against. You got to prove that to us. Okay. So that is a huge thing. And I'm fine with tabling this and coming back. I just want that said for the record. That's what we're looking at. That's the big thing here.
Thank you, Shelley. I'm sorry, you can ask after the fact.
And if you'd like to clarify anything with staff, in the meantime, you're always welcome to reach out to us.
That was actually my comment, is that I'm not fully familiar with the case law in this area, which, you know, it's challenging to be familiar with all of it. A lot of it, so it is focused on the land, is my understanding, limited as it is. Some of the cases that are out there focus specifically on land that does not have an existing building. Personally, I would be curious to know more about its application when there is a building on the land, if there's a similarly situated property in particular.
Okay.
And again, to reiterate my ask of the architect of the property owner, show us evidence of either solutions that would not require a variance that are clearly not feasible or not or absurd. And I think you've done a little bit of that, but not a ton. And the other flip side would show us how show us that it's a negative one, but show us how there are no practical solutions that don't require variance, that involve some of these sort of basic engineering things where you're maybe opening up a wall or changing some of the roof structure without changing the height or the footprint or the rest, akin to what you've done in the past in other parts of the building, that simply don't exist in this case.
Peter, would you like to move to have this tabled?
Do they request that they table, or I would be happy to move? Yes, I would be happy to move to table, Richard.
We didn't ask them, but
We
they're
did
nodding,
ask
they're
them
sort of
if they
nodding
want
their
to.
head. So,
Yes, I so move.
Second.
all in favor? We show of hands is fine on this one. Peter, are you in favor?
Yep, I'm
Five,
there.
nothing. We'll table this till the July meeting. Okay. Staff, you all set with that? Okay. Afterwards, if you'd like to talk to the staff about, you know, what additional information you can provide, please feel free to do so. Okay.
That done during weekday, normal times, or should we wait till this is over?
You can reach out. You can reach out to us tomorrow or whenever. You don't have to hang around for this one if you don't want to.
Okay. It's so much fun. I don't know why you
Yeah.
wouldn't want to, but
Thank you.
sure. The next item on the agenda is 4.07. It's appeal number 2801. Practical difficulty variance appeal by Carrie Lorfano of Lorfano Family Builders on behalf of Jean Rose Gould of 40 Winslow Homer Road.
Yeah, introduce this item.
Yeah, are you going to speak? Why don't you walk up, and while she does that, Helen, would you just jump right in?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a practical difficulty variance for 40 Winslow Homer Road. The property is in the R2 district. The variance is being sought to permit a lot split essentially due to insufficient street frontage. The existing lot has sufficient functional street frontage for that lot split, but it's located along an existing non-conforming network of private ways that would make it impossible to do that lot split in a conforming manner. We have the standards for your reference in your packet and on the slides, and the applicant is available for discussion.
Why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about the property and what you're looking for?
Sure. So I'm Carrie Lorfano, Lorfano Family Builders, and we have been working for the Gould family at maintaining this property for about 6 years. 40 Winslow Homer Road is a large lot relative to the lots in the neighborhood, and it has 2 existing houses on it. They are 110 years old. Both houses, one is larger, one is smaller, but they've both been residential for all of that time. The smaller of the 2 houses is in extremely poor condition. It was originally built as a carriage house and a small dwelling. It was later expanded, but it has no real foundation drainage. So there's a lot of moisture in the home. There's mold in the home. Not to bring that back up, but there is a lot of mold in the home. The family has evaluated over the years. They've tried a lot of different things, obviously in 110 years, to make the home better, to make it less damp. A lot of the things that you talked about in the previous appellant's case, but it is a small, poorly constructed home. So it also needs a new foundation, and the framing structural members are insufficient. So it's also uninsulated, just as a side note. So it's been in the same family for all 110 years of its existence, and it's owned currently in 13 fractional shares. So the reason why they want to split the lot is because, again, of the 13 individuals that currently are the owners, some have the ability and the means to replace the home, which is really the only option at this point, and some do not. So splitting the property creates 2 completely conforming lots, again, because of the size of it, and because the entire purpose is to demolish the existing smaller home and rebuild a larger conforming home. It creates a hardship in that if 13 people own it and only 5 people have the ability to improve it, create the new home, you can't really build a home on a lot that you don't completely own. I think that would create an economic hardship. The parcel can be divided into 2 lots that easily meet all space and bulk standards of the Scarborough ordinance, as Helen's pointed out. Winslow Homer Road, obviously, as Helen also pointed out, is a large network of private roads. So the practical difficulty is in that obviously, there is no option to bring the road up to public standards. One important reason the family has created these bullet points for me, why the circumstances at 40 Winslow Homer are unique, is that it is one large lot with 2 old houses. It's not a typical lot split where you're splitting off a lot and creating an additional home that's going to be utilizing the private way. It's always been there. It's always been utilizing the private way. So that does add to the uniqueness of the situation. Separate ownership will allow for replacement of the north house with replacement will be in compliance with all town requirements, no change in road traffic or character in the neighborhood. The original lot split drawing that was submitted did show a slight nonconformity with the existing house. But again, as I've stated, the existing house is going away if we are able to do the lot split.
And if you'd like me to share anything on the screen, I should have said that earlier. But
Yeah.
if you'd like and be shown at some point.
I think you've all seen the lot split that's been proposed, and you can see that the nonconformity is just a very small portion of the existing house that crosses over. And they've already redrawn it so that that nonconformity is eliminated even with the existing home, so that the lot split could be accomplished before the house could be torn down.
Does anybody have any questions or of the applicant before we go through the standards? Peter or David,
Nope.
did you have a question?
Yeah, so what exactly are you looking for with this variance? Because I just don't see that. What is, it says here for B, list the exact dimensional reduction requested. And the answer to that was both lots created by the subdivision would be conforming lots if front footage variance is granted. So what exactly are you looking for?
It's a private way.
B?
Yep, it's a private way, and it exceeds 6 lots on the private way. So we would need the lot split so that, because it would add an additional lot to the private way, so the variance would be, otherwise you'd have to bring the private way up to a public standard, and so the variance would be to allow this lot to exist on the existing private way.
So in effect, they're asking for a variance of the frontage requirement for
Mhm.
the property.
Okay. And I know in our notes that we saw exactly how many feet that was. It is a substantial amount.
Yeah.
And I believe that one of the staff comments mentioned that you really can't count the certain portion of that frontage as frontage. So that in effect, you only have like 30 feet
May
or
I?
something like, yeah.
May I clarify something just
No.
briefly? So what is it, 34 Westwood was the one with a section that could count as frontage. In this case, the entirety of the frontage of the existing lot cannot count as frontage because it's entirely along a non-conforming private road network. So it would be for the extent of the frontage.
So there is zero
Zero.
on
Yeah.
that second lot. You know, with-
On the first.
There's 0 on the entire existing lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's about 287 feet of functional frontage, but
Okay.
none that can serve as legal frontage in the event of a lot split.
So if the question, I guess, to staff is that if the subdivision were not put in there, how would that affect the frontage issue?
So it's a legally existing non-conforming lot because of the year that the lot was developed. So its location on that existing non-conforming private way network, as it stands, it is legally existing. And the lot split, and I want to be super clear that this is a lot split and not a subdivision,
Right.
would require legal frontage for both lots that would be created from that lot split. So as it exists, it's fine, but they wouldn't be able to create a conforming lot without a variance on that frontage requirement.
I understand that part of it.
Yeah,
Okay.
they could tear down the existing house and rebuild it, no problem at all, except it would have to be on that one lot. And that's why they would like to divide the lot, not subdivide
Well,
it.
yeah, and also it'd be different ownership.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
which
the reason.
was mentioned. Yes.
Okay.
And because it's on a private way, like they could, if they this is more for my education, if they all agreed, all the houses on that road to make it a public road, would they even be in front of us right now?
If the
Was it
entire,
max of 6? Is that what the?
yes, it's a legally non-conforming private road network that doesn't apply only to the frontage of this lot. It's the entirety of this neighborhood effectively that has lots along this private way. And it's non-conforming because private ways aren't meant in the ordinance to have over 6 lots developed on them, and there are many more than that in this case. So that's what makes it a non-conforming lot. And I'll let the applicant speak to the public road standards, but in conversations with staff, that's a fairly large hurdle, just in the context of the site.
How many houses are on this road currently?
Oh, this is number 40, Winslow Homer. So if
Yep.
you, if
Okay.
you go on Google Map and you map it, I mean, there's all of 60, I would estimate.
And none of these other houses needed to get a variance?
No, they're not
They're
conforming, but they're
pre-existing, okay.
grandfathered.
There have been homes built on Winslow Homer Road in the last few years. I don't know if they got variances to be built. I just know that when we applied or sent the potential lot division to the staff, that it was flagged as this difficulty.
And both Jocelyn Street and Winslow Homer Road are private. All those roads, as we look at the map there, Are those are all private roads?
Essentially, all of Prouts Neck is a private way network, so there's multiple roads and different names.
Yeah.
They're all, that whole peninsula, that whole, ball at the end right there is all private way, pre-existing lots. So there have been a number of homes, to my knowledge, I think, in this area that have come before you for a variance of different things such as a setback variance, but not for the creation of a new lot. So this is it's a different case essentially because they are attempting to split the lot, and the lot standards need to be, they need to have frontage for a lot.
Okay, so I have one further staff question. If, instead of building a brand new home on the proposed second lot, okay, if the existing home were simply raised and on the same foundation, a new home was set there, okay, would that work?
As long as it didn't trigger the variance issue that the existing home triggered.
Right. They, as the lot exists now, they can rebuild either dwelling, because it's legally existing, non-conforming, but the lot split cannot occur without that frontage issue being addressed.
So if I may address
Yeah.
that as well, it still doesn't solve the ownership issue. Again, not all 13 owners have the resources and the house needs to be replaced. So that is part of the uniqueness of the case. I realize it doesn't apply as far as the road practicality issue, but it's the same family. It's going to stay in the same family. It's just that members of the family don't want to put the money into, and this house, I will say, because we've reviewed it several times with the family to decide and look at feasible alternatives, absolutely under no circumstances could be lifted. And there is not enough foundation to put another home back on.
We'll go through this, start going through the standards.
I think we should, yeah.
Yep. The first is, please demonstrate how the strict application of the dimensional standards.
No.
Okay, yeah, yes. No, you're gonna do it. You're gonna
I'm
respond.
going to do it. Okay,
Yeah,
sorry. I
we
thought
just
this was
put-
discussion.
No, I understand.
Okay,
I
yeah.
We just put it into the record. That's
Sure.
So it's please demonstrate how the strict application of the dimensional standards of the ordinance to the property for which variance is sought would both preclude a use of the property that is permitted in the zone in which it is located and would also result in significant economic injury to the applicant.
So the significant economic injury to the applicant would be in either needing to bring the road up to public standard. That would be extremely significant economic injury to the applicant.
Okay. The second is the need for a variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property and not to the general conditions of the neighborhood.
Yes, the uniqueness of the property is related to the size of the property and the ownership shares.
Number three, and if anybody has any questions or comments, jump in.
Yeah.
I have
David?
a comment about
Oh,
that too after you're done.
Okay, thank you. All right, so this specifically states that it's the property, not people.
Right,
So just want to make that distinction. It has nothing to do with who owns it
sure,
in this particular criterion.
yes.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. That's who owns what is not really unique. It's the property itself, so.
Yes.
The one thing I'd observe is if I look at the parcel viewer, it looks like there are quite a lot of, call it 1.25 to 1.4 acre lots with more than one building on the in the Prouts Neck area down there. So I guess I'm struggling how the property is unique in that sense. Like just a visual scan of the map. And then if you click on individual properties, you get the actual number of acres. And it's helpful, but
I mean, I think, and I could be speaking out of turn here, but I think there are a fair number of accessory dwelling units in that area. But a lot the size of 40 Winslow Road with two houses as spread out as they are is unique to the area. Just driving through, you can see that it is a large open lot with a lot of frontage. So again,
we try not to do that drive-by thing, if you don't mind.
Sure.
It's kind of we try to stick to the maps.
Sure.
So, and again, that's part of what I'm struggling with. I'm sticking the maps and what the parcel viewer and the parcel details say about buildings on the site and number of acres, and it's not. I will agree. It's not the common. It's not like every lot is that size, but there are quite a few greater than 1 acre or less than 1.5 acre lots in that area with 2 houses. So I make the observation. So and this gets to the sort of the evidentiary standard that we're looking for. What I'm saying is I'm struggling seeing the evidence from the appellant that describes this as being unique, as opposed to what I can interpret and what I'm left to interpret from the parcel map that the town provides for what exists in the neighborhood.
Yeah, I agree with you, Peter. That was well said. And I think that it's important to know that, first of all, I don't even think we're allowed to drive down there because it's a private way, but we need evidence presented to us as if we have never driven over there. We don't know
Sure.
anything about the neighborhood.
Sure.
We need to hear it from you of what makes this unique. So I also have kind of struggled to see.
Well, the other uniqueness of the property is the age of the property, age of the homes on the property. I don't know if that's sort of an admissible piece either. And the poor condition of the smaller home is unique. And again, I guess if you're looking at the zoning maps, you can only take my word for it. But if you look at the street view, it is, as it stands right now, the smaller home on the property is very, very infrequently used because of the 13 people that own it, nobody wants to stay in it because it's in terrible shape. And it's much smaller and more rundown, frankly, than a lot of the properties in the neighborhood.
The third, oh, sure.
May I please, before we leave the section, I just want to add, staff commented that one thing that makes this property not unique is that all of the properties in that area are impacted by the need to upgrade the road to city or town standards. So they share all of that in common. And that's a significant issue. And that's what you're claiming as your basis for practical difficulty.
Yes. The issue of bringing the road up to public standard, again, and the addition of houses on the road. So another point that the owners added on the sheet that they wanted me to mention is that within the past 5 years, the town has improved construction of several new houses in the Prouts Neck neighborhood, including a lot split. So they just pointed out that obviously we're looking at what we're looking at right now in this situation, but there is precedent that this has happened on the private way within the recent history. So that doesn't add to the uniqueness of this situation, but there is precedent for lot split and new construction on the private road.
You might not know the answer to this one, but I'll ask staff as well. If that's the case, and we'll accept that as read for the time being, did those require variances, or were those for lots that could be split that were already were in conformance? And you probably don't know, or you might not know. So I hate to put you on the spot on that one, but.
Peter, we don't know specifically. It would not surprise me if lot splits occurred without meeting all of our ordinances. But I am making sure that we meet all of our ordinances for all of our particular requests.
Which is
That's
why
why
I
we love you,
hesitate
Autumn.
to bring it up, but
That's
that
why we
is
love
in
you.
fact what
So we
has
should not
happened.
take that into
Yeah.
consideration.
Please do not take in interpreting our ordinances incorrectly into your interpretation.
New sheriff in town.
The third standard is the granting of a variance will not produce an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood and will not have an unreasonably detrimental effect on either the use or fair market value of abutting properties.
It will in fact increase the use and fair market value of the abutting properties.
4, the practical difficulty is not the result of action taken by the applicant or a prior owner.
No, they did. No, the private road has been there as long as the houses have been there.
Has the owner owned the property since they were built? I get the sense that they were the original owners of the property.
Yes, this is, I think they're on the third or fourth generation of ownership currently.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. That got it.
Number 5 is no other feasible alternative is available to the applicant except a variance.
In order to tear down and build the new house, no other feasible alternative is available.
That's not quite correct, though,
Then
right?
the lot split.
The lot.
The lot split.
Yeah.
And there's no feasible alternative than the lot split.
Okay. That's a sort of tough one to understand and present evidence on, because if the problem of the 13 owners, we don't have any particular evidence that they haven't, or how you would resolve that issue other than the lot split. And I'm not sure we want to get into that yet either.
Well,
Yeah,
I
I was
totally
gonna say,
agree.
Richard, I struggle with that one too. And I don't think this board has the ability to go into, issues of equity within a trust that's been established by a family, blah, 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 blah. That's beyond our purview. Yeah, it's still a tough one as it relates to the no feasible alternative question. I agree.
I think-
The point I wish to make, when we're looking at this particular criterion, what we always look for in the past is show us other things you considered before coming to us with this request and why you rejected them. Okay. And usually it's monetary issues,
Sure.
not subjective things, but why? Okay. So can you add anything to what you've already said?
I mean, like I said, we've been working with this family for a relatively long time, and they have done small improvements to the smaller house and tried to make it better for the family. They've explored lots of options, including and not limited to, lifting it, having all of the members, buy into a new situation. I'm not, again, like you, I'm not a member of the family, so I'm not privy to all of the interior conversations that have gone on about how to manage it, but I think that they have been talking about it for a very long time.
Well, I'll just give you an example.
Sure.
Just or out there for consideration. What would be wrong with expanding the existing home, not the one that's in bad shape? Okay, expand the existing home.
Sure.
And maybe make a duplex out of it. Okay, so the newer section, could be for those who could afford the costs of that, they would pay for it. And the ones who, they already have equity in this because they're part owners, or shares. Had you considered that? Or have the owners?
It's a historic home. It's 110 years old. And again, the main home is decent sized and, 13 people own it, but a lot more than 13 people use it. I think that they don't, yeah.
Double the size of it.
I think that they don't want to impact the character of the 110-year-old family home and make it into a duplex.
Do want to tear it
Yeah.
down.
No, they want to tear down
Okay.
the carriage house / annex building, which is not anything special or, yes, no.
A good architect could deal with the family's concern on that in order to be able to match the addition to the existing
Well, the
architecture.
issue isn't architectural. The issue is that some of the members don't want to pay for it.
Correct.
the
No, I
problem.
understand that.
Okay.
But that's the issue. They can do everything they want on this. The problem is that
but
some members don't want to
it's
pay
just-
for it and so they
it's
just
just-
keep the property.
Aren't able to pay for it, yeah.
Well,
So then you have people that are, I think,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
don't
but that
want
would
to do it.
require no variance.
I understand, but money that they don't have, I guess.
No, I'm not asking, I'm not suggesting that you would ask those who couldn't afford to pay for it. Okay, because they could live in house number 1, okay? That's
Right.
fine, okay? Or visit there. I imagine these are seasonal, whatever.
Mhm.
Just people are coming and going all the time. And that for the addition to number 1, okay, then, that could be real nice for the people who could afford it. They would live there.
Yeah, I can't really speculate on how that would work. And
I know you're not
it wouldn't,
a
it's not
member.
my,
So it sounds like there are family dynamics at play here that,
Big time.
We
Aaron,
just
you
don't- we
wanted to jump
understand,
in?
yeah.
If I could make a clarifying point about the term feasible alternative. So I believe what the board should be deliberating on is whether or not a lot split can be, is feasible without the variance. So they're requesting a variance in order to,
No, what I'm saying is here, Aaron, is that that would not require a lot split.
I understand that's what you're saying, but that's not what they're
No,
requesting.
But for this particular criterion, okay,
Mhm.
it says, did you consider other things? You know, and in this particular case, that would not require a variance as far as I know.
But I think what Aaron is saying is that the framing of that criteria has to do with what the actual request is and what alternatives to that specific, how that request could be achieved. Is that fair? Like, it's not anything that could happen on the lot, but rather feasible alternative to what is being sought through this variance.
Well, that sounds like a very narrow interpretation. But again, we can leave that up to our meeting
Yeah, we can talk about it when we
with
get.
council.
Item 7 is the granting of a variance will not have an unreasonably adverse effect on the natural environment.
No, no impact. There's already a home there.
Did I skip 6? I'm sorry, I did. Shelley points out I skipped 6. But we've handled 7, so now we're going to go back to 6. The granting of a variance will result in bringing the applicant's property more nearly into conformance with surrounding properties.
Yes, and conformance with building code.
Okay. And then the last one is with
What-
respect to.
Can I make
oh,
a
sure,
comment
jump
on
in.
that?
Yep.
I mean, there was not really much evidence. You just said yes. I mean, it didn't, you didn't give us anything about that.
So I guess if you wanted more,
I don't see anything with surrounding properties. No
Well, I mean,
information about it.
all we're looking at really here is that we're going to decide that they
Okay.
don't need the frontage, right? And so it's not what they're going to build on that property. We have no control over that.
Doesn't giving them frontage make it less or less conforming because the rest of the properties have no frontage? Is that not?
Yeah,
Let's say
it is odd here.
It's interesting.
And I think this will come up as we talk about other elements of the thing, but I share Shelley's concern on this one.
Okay. And then the last item 8 is the property is not located in whole or in part in the shoreline zone. And I think you've confirmed that it's not, right? So we're good on that one.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
sure.
No, actually, one was 8.
We'll open this up now to public comment. Anybody online or nobody else is in the auditorium here, so the room, so we're good on that. Hearing none, public hearing is closed and now we're up for deliberation. Anybody want to start us off?
I'll start number 1 because it's easy.
Okay.
Please demonstrate how the strict application of the dimensional standards of the ordinance to the property for which a variance is sought would both preclude a use of the property that is permitted in the zone in which it is located and would result in significant economic injury to the applicant. I think this is true, and I think we'll come up with other objections or other potential issues. But the nature of this road network as being private roads means that frontage will be an issue on almost any proposed change in a lot. And therefore a variance will always be required for any change in this lot. So in that sense, there's not per se a significant economic injury. It's just that the lot is frozen in time because it was constructed prior to the existence of zoning, and it was constructed on a network of roads that do not benefit from the definitional requirements of frontage. So I think this one is actually met in a weird way, but nevertheless met.
It is interesting in this context. I mean, we're being asked to do, there must have been a reason why the zoning code says 75 feet of frontage on a public road or a private road that meets standards. And I mean, otherwise you wouldn't need it, right? So it's got to have some purpose. And so what we're now saying is that it doesn't have to meet that purpose. We can build houses without having that fulfilled, and so there must be some consequence to that. Maybe it's that fire trucks can't get there, or police department can't get there, or public service vehicles can't get in. I mean, otherwise, why would you care whether there was frontage or not on an unmaintained road as opposed to a maintained road? And so the question here is, do we, in the end, do we really care whether or not we violate that standard? Are there any consequences associated with it? And it strikes me that if there weren't any consequences, it wouldn't be in the zoning code. So there must be consequences with relieving that standard as something the applicant must meet.
Which would be the flip side of how I presented it, Richard. And I think that would be a valid way to look at it. So yeah, I would personally open this up to a vote, and we can see how each one of us interpret how this should be viewed as a dimensional standard.
I was gonna say, I see where you're going with that, both of you, but I disagree with this. It has to both preclude the use of the property, which they said the house is old, one of them, but they're not gonna tear it down and it's historic, so it's usable. And then they wanna do the other one, they wanna tear the other part down if they split it. So it precludes the use of the property that's permitted in the zone and results in a significant economic injury, which I saw no figures. I did not hear enough evidence to say, I mean, like, I don't even know if you said if they're gonna have to sell all the shares and the land's gonna be sold, which is probably what I would consider significant economic injury, but I didn't hear that at all.
Well,
I didn't hear any of that evidence. So
and-
I'm a no on this.
And Shelley, for me, the reason why I'm a yes is you've got a both standard, both preclude a use of the property that is permitted in the zone which is located. And it does, if we applied the frontage standard to this property, nothing could be built on this property because the roads are not public.
Okay. Yeah,
So,
all right.
so check on the first both.
Okay.
And would result in significant economic injury to the applicant. Now, one could argue that this is still a piece of property on Black Point, so no matter what, people are going to love it. But you still couldn't build anything on it because the frontage is always going to be on a private road.
No, that's not true. You can
Well,
build
but
it.
they're gonna rebuild another.
So you can rebuild the house. That's not the problem. The problem is that they can't because of the internal dynamics of the family.
So.
Well, okay,
maybe
if that's
a
the case-
non-issue for the variance.
Yeah, I mean, the variance has no impact in the end on what they're going to do with the property.
But I think the issue for significant economic injury, my understanding is that it would be the economic injury caused by not being able to split the lots. So if you take
Sure,
the
but there was
ownership out of
No
it,
evidence
is
presented about it.
is it an economic injury to not be able to sell 2 lots rather than 1?
But I mean,
But that wasn't argued by the appellant.
no, and
at all.
and we have this. I mean, this is a fairly common problem, right? You have a piece of property, the owner dies, the 2 kids are there, and they can't buy each other out, so they have to sell the property. Right? Alternatively, they could split it in half and build 2 houses on it, one for each. But they can't do that because there's only 75 feet of frontage. But they could come and say, well, we really don't want to sell the house. We'd really like to build 2. We need a variance to enable let us keep the house and do it that way. And, you start down this path, once you start getting into that, it becomes, you're opening up a lot of problems that are going to arise. David, I'm sorry, I jumped in.
Absolutely, not a problem at all. The applicant told us that the damage would be triggering the complete bringing up to standard of the road, of that road, okay, which would be a significant cost to them. I mean, just astronomical. I don't know what it would cost, but the entire road would have to be improved. So that's what they're claiming. If we don't grant the variance and they choose to proceed with this, then it's going to create a huge economic cost for them.
Would that's actually part of being a feasible alternative? If we don't grant this variance, nothing's gonna happen.
Well,
They could still use that house, which they say isn't usable, but historic.
Or maybe they can figure out how to do the internal dynamic when the variance is denied.
I'll even maybe give you the significant economic injury because it would cost a lot to try to make that a public road, but it doesn't preclude the use of the property that's permitted in the zone. I just don't see that.
no, it doesn't, but they were claiming that as the economic injury.
Were it not for the frontage issue, would they be able to split the lot? Do they have enough of
Yeah.
everything else? Yes. So then that would preclude a use that, like, otherwise they would be able to split the lot if not for the frontage, hence the variance.
Yep. And Rebecca, I agree. That's where I come down. That's my interpretation of how you parse the logic on this one.
Okay, well, we've been around
Okay,
this one a
just to
few
come
times.
back to that, okay? So if we, okay, so if we let them split the lot, okay? Then at the same time, they could rebuild that second house. And that's really, the issue here. It's all about splitting the lot. Now, I understand why they want to do that, but, the economic injury part is not related to the reason they want to split the lot. That's because of family issues, which is not something that we need to consider at all. That's their issue to figure that out. But, it's going to trigger, whatever happens here is going to trigger, the bringing up to that road up to standard. And that's the economic injury they're claiming. And I just don't, that's fine, but, I just not reasonable at all. So I don't know where we go on that particular one. But, that first criteria is, that's a tough one. You've got to meet two standards here. A use, which is precluded. Well, that is, it is allowed, but the significant economic injury that's a big number. And I'm not saying that should roll it out or say that, or we can say, well, okay, well, that is definitely an injury which you shouldn't have, and therefore we'll give you a variance. I don't know. I just don't know at this point.
Well, we're gonna know in a minute.
Yeah, I guess we're gonna know. I'm gonna have to vote.
Any other comments before we do a vote? Why don't we do roll calls on these, because Peter's online. So Doreen, would you start us down? Peter, did you hear Doreen? She's just.
Oh, no,
calling me.
Doreen, did you have your mic on? I didn't hear you say anything.
Nope. Peter Freilinger,
Yes.
Rebecca Hack,
Yes.
Richard Silkman,
No.
David Bork,
No.
and Michelle Stevenson.
No.
Okay, 3-2, no. All right, Michelle, could you take us through number 2?
Sure. The need for a variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property and not to the general conditions of the neighborhood. So the property is very old and it seems like it might actually not be that unique in lot size. I don't know the general conditions of the neighborhood. I don't really have a lot of information to go on, to be honest with you. So if anybody else can make more comment. I failed to see how this was unique. Other than no frontage, like on any of these houses have frontage technically. Which is pretty unique, I guess.
Okay.
I guess maybe I shouldn't have taken this one. Sorry, guys.
No,
I'm sorry.
We gotta think this
Let
through.
me just add to that, okay? What I see is, okay, first of all, there's nothing unique about this in terms of the impact it's gonna have on everybody on that street. Okay, if they subdivide this lot, because that's gonna trigger the road expansion or upgrade.
Unless we give them a variance.
So, exactly, okay? So, why should we give them a variance? Because we're creating a greater nonconformity. So, not sure that makes sense.
Anybody else have any comments on this one? Okay.
Yeah, I just go back to
Peter, jump in.
yeah, with Shelley, the only real evidence that I can point to on this one is by taking a look at the parcel viewer, and it does not appear that this is a unique issue for this property. There are plenty of other multi-unit or multi-building 1 acre or greater properties on these private road networks that would be amenable to lot divisions or whatever they might have. In fact, it looks like some have been recently divided. So this doesn't appear to be unique. With the best, with I think the highest quality evidence we have, which is the town's own parcel map. So I come out with this as a no.
Doreen, could you call the roll on this one?
Peter Freilinger,
No.
Rebecca Hatt,
No.
Richard Silkman,
No.
David Bork,
No.
and Michelle Stevenson.
No.
David, you want to do number 3?
Sure. Thank you. The granting of the variance will not produce an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood, will not have an unreasonable detrimental effect on either the use of or the fair market value of abutting properties. This will not, the proposal won't hurt any of the other, the character of the neighborhood, or the impact on the values of other properties at all. So I think that this one has been met.
I would also like to add, though, that adding another lot onto an already way above 6 houses is going to not necessarily add to the undesirable change in character of the neighborhood, but I don't know. I guess it's economically, environmentally it might, but that's not what we're, sorry. That's not
It
in
says
that one.
fair market
I
value.
know, that's a different
Yeah.
variance.
Anybody else have any comments on this one? Nope. Doreen, would you like to call the roll?
Rebecca Hatt,
Sorry, I got confused.
You want to take a second?
It will not produce it, yes.
Richard Silkman,
Yes.
David Bork,
Yes.
Michelle Stevenson,
Yes.
and Peter Freilinger.
Yes.
He said yes.
You said yes, right, Peter?
You
You were
did,
very soft.
Yeah, I did. I'm sorry if it didn't become clear, but yes.
Okay. Rebecca, you want to walk us through number 4?
The practical difficulty is not the result of action taken by the applicant or a prior owner. This lot was created sounds like the house was also built and purchased prior to zoning law, so I would go with no. Oh, so sorry.
All right,
I would
you-
go with
yes.
yes.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments on that one?
Well, yeah, I guess I'll just have to throw this one in. The lot 2, which is the one that's post lot 2, the house is in real bad shape, and I would say that that's actually negligence on the part of the owners. So, I don't know. I mean, the condition, why does the house need it? Well, you can certainly make the case it's because the applicants didn't take care of it properly, didn't do
That's
proper
certainly true.
maintenance on it when they should have.
The other thing I'd say on this one, Richard,
Yep.
actually, are we voting yet?
No, why don't you jump in and then we'll vote after you comment.
Okay.
Do you want to talk about this item or something?
Yeah, this item, yeah. Because I think the practical difficulty, part of this is the nature of the ownership structure that they've got here. And you've mentioned a few times, this would not be the first time that zoning regulations force a post-probate decision among heirs. And if I make a strict interpretation of this, the practical difficulty is not the result of action taken by the applicant. That action might include the death of a prior owner, and that action may be what's leading us to this issue here.
I don't know if death can be categorized as an action by a prior owner.
Depends
We'd
on
be
what
careful
God.
with that,
Yeah,
But also, But to clarify as well, are we talking about the people or are we talking about the property? Because if we're talking about the property, then nothing about the ownership structure has anything to do with this conversation, is my feeling on it. I could be
No,
wrong about that.
I will disagree with you on that one because again, the ownership structure, the owners have another option, which is to vote differently about how to have a different shareholder vote,
Right, but
and that would be an action.
But that doesn't, regardless, even if one person owned this property, they could still come and ask for a split here. That's, I mean, you could still ask. They have everything except for the road frontage. You could still ask. There's still an economic injury potentially in not being able to have the second lot where it could exist. I don't think we have to get into the ownership structure in order to answer these.
Let me, could I have a 5-second pause to think about that, Rebecca? I think that's an interesting argument to make. I just want to think about it a little bit because I'll think out loud a little bit because if there were only one owner, they could come to us for a lot split. If it were owned by a diverse set of shareholders, they would have a vote that would go yes or no, and if it went yes, they would come to us. So if I go along that spectrum, and again, the action there would be the governance decision taken by in this case, trust, in other case, or partnership or corporation that would do that. And that could include a lack of action, which is a decision not to take a vote and just run with the variance process and see what happens.
Right, but what I'm saying is that if you're thinking about action in terms of the property, then you would more often be thinking about like, did you subdivide this in a way that met the letter of the law, but essentially in an attempt to evade the law and then paint yourself into a corner and now you need a variance because you messed up.
No, I hear you. And that's why I still think that this is a no to me because of the word action. But I hear what you're saying. It's just for me, action can include a governance action, and I think I'll fall on that sword on this one. But I hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree with where you're coming from. I disagree with you, but that's okay.
All right. Well, that's fine. Why don't we do the roll call on this one?
Could I-
Oh, sure. Oh, hold on one second, Helen.
Sorry, just to make sure that I get the findings right, Peter, could you briefly restate your finding on this criteria?
My finding on this one is that the practical difficulty is not the difficulty of the action. The action here is effectively the governance action on the part of the ownership trust to not seek other ownership actions and only seek a variance.
Okay, thank you.
So and so I'm interpreting action to include the range of governance actions capable of being taken by an owner.
Okay. Doreen, you want to do the roll?
Rebecca Hatt,
Yes.
Richard Silkman,
No.
David Bork,
No.
Michelle Stevenson,
Yes.
and Peter Freilinger.
No.
Okay, 3-2 against on that one. Item 5 is no other feasible alternative is available to the applicant except a variance. This is a lot like number 4. And so there's not a whole lot to add to the discussion that we just had on number 4 from my perspective. I think it's the same debate as to whether or not there are feasible alternatives and what those alternatives might have been. So, I don't know if
I
any-
would agree with you. I'd just like to add that I didn't really see a lot of alternatives that were available, presented to us, that they thought through.
Yep.
But I agree.
If I may add, I didn't see any attempt whatsoever for them to present any evidence of alternatives that were considered and why they were rejected.
Rebecca?
I would love in general for us to provide more clarification around the meaning of this, because I think at least in this case, I'm again kind of confused on if we're talking about the people or the property. And if we're talking about the property, if we are talking about there's no other feasible way for them to split the property, or if we are including the alternative that they just do nothing and they leave the property as is.
I've got that on the top of my list for our attorney to discuss with us at the workshop.
And I think Phil did discuss that with us at the pizza luncheon, which we can talk about later, but the way that I interpreted what he was saying was that it can mean not feasible for the appellant too, not just like, this doesn't work this way, like this didn't work for them because, but I just, I think it's pretty vague, but I didn't really hear much discussion on it at all. And that's where I have a real big problem with it. Most of the time we end up trying to provide feasible alternatives for them to come at and say, oh yeah, well, no, we did, and we're prompting them. So that's where I'm at. I don't know if that was helpful for you. I think we should discuss it again because I would like clarification just to make sure that I said that correctly, but that was what I interpreted. I think you were there, David. But.
I would agree to that. And in the 7 years that I've been on this board, I think it's 7 years now, something like that. I think that, we look back at all the practical difficulty variances that we've had. We've always, looked at, well, it's numbered 5 here, but it's really 4. But I know why. We've always looked at that in terms of the applicant has to be able to show us that it was really that what they're asking for is the only reasonable way to, to deal with the situation and to provide, some documentation for that. And when an applicant fails to do that, then they haven't met it. It's just very simple. And I think Phil would agree with that.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Doreen, you want to call the roll on this one?
Rebecca Hatt,
No.
Richard Silkman,
No.
David Bork,
No.
Michelle Stevenson,
No.
and Peter Freilinger.
No.
Shelley, you want to do number 6?
Sure. We'll give it another shot. The granting of a variance will result in bringing the applicant's property more nearly in conformance with the surrounding properties. So unfortunately, I would like to say yes to this, but by splitting this lot, it's going to bring it to less conformity with it being, the rest of them being 0 frontage, like I said earlier. The property sizes itself would be fine, but it's the frontage. Because they would be the only houses with frontage, right?
No, they
No.
still would not have
they-
frontage, but
The,
the
well, the
variance would
okay,
have
so,
granted it
okay.
for purposes of the building, but it still would not have
Right.
frontage.
but they would have the variance.
Yes.
So I don't know, maybe it's kind of a neutral.
No, Michelle, I think maybe I agree. I agree with your original logic. I think if we grant the variance, then this lot will be special. All the other lots in the area will not have
The
access to
lot-
that variance.
It's not actually bringing the lot further out of compliance, though. It's creating a second lot, which is also out of compliance in the same way that the original lot was out of
It's
compliance.
not really bringing it more in conformance.
No, it's
though,
not.
Yeah,
either.
I agree.
yeah,
I'd
exactly.
say
So,
it's
which
neutral.
is what this is asking, right? Is it
Yeah.
gonna bring it more into conformance? I guess not really, but you're right. I don't think it's less, but I don't think
Well,
it's more.
I agree. I
would
think it's
argue that if you
neutral.
create 2 non-conforming properties out of 1, then in aggregate, you've increased the amount of non-conformance in the neighborhood.
But they would be conforming because of the variance. Just to,
And they also conform to all the other standards. So my
Well,
argument was like,
and-
if you look at number of lots, you're correct. But if you look at what's actually there, you're not necessarily creating additional structures. You're not necessarily, you're not changing the acreage that's already there.
You are
And that
correct.
whole acreage was out of conformance to begin with. So you're not bringing it further out of conformance, but I agree that you're not bringing it closer either.
And Helen, I hear what you're saying, but no, we don't bring the property into conformance by granting the variance. We're accepting the non-conformance. Approving a variance does not make a non-conforming property conforming magically. It accepts the non-conformance.
Thank you.
Okay.
David?
I look at it a little bit differently. I think by granting a variance, we are actually formalizing a nonconformity rather than the current situation where it's all grandfathered. It was there because there were no, requirements years ago prior to modern zoning. So I know it's a technicality, but I could go either way on this one. You'll find out when I vote.
We'll know in a minute. Doreen, would you like to read the roll, please, on this one?
Rebecca Hatt,
I mean, I don't think it brings it more nearly into compliance, so I'm gonna say no.
Richard Silkman,
No.
David Bork,
Yes.
Michelle Stevenson,
No.
and Peter Freilinger.
No, and I lost my bet on David.
Okay.
Thanks, Peter.
David, you want to handle number 7? David?
Granting of a variance will not have an unreasonable adverse effect on the natural environment. I think that's actually it has a beneficial impact because the house that would be torn down had drainage issues, if I'm not mistaken. Whereas the new house that would be there in its place, those issues would be resolved.
This is where I was bringing up earlier about you're making one lot to 2 in an already kind of sensitive area in general. I mean, perhaps it's like kind of, I think that's worse for the natural environment to put another structure on that land. But
That's a huge lot, though.
it is a huge lot.
At the very least, I don't think that we necessarily heard evidence that this is true.
I don't think it's unreasonable adverse effects, though. I do think that having 2 potential houses versus one.
And remember,
on
they
there
could
is-
still
but
build
I don't think it's
houses.
unreasonable.
So.
Yeah.
Anything else on this one?
What I say is the zone allows for lots of the size being proposed to be created, which means the town has determined that lots of that size in this zone don't create prima facie a unreasonable adverse effect on the natural environment. So given that, I would say I would vote yes on this one, that it will be creating 2 new lots, both of which will be subject to the standards of in this zone. And the zone was created with the idea that lots that are smaller than the current property size are still okay.
Doreen, could you call the roll on this one, please?
Rebecca Hatt,
I'll say yes.
Richard Silkman,
Yes.
David Bork,
Yes.
Michelle Stevenson.
Yes.
And Peter Freilinger.
Yes.
And the 8th standard is that it's not in the shoreline zone, so we know that that's the case. Oh, we're good on that one. All right. Could I have a motion?
Motion to
Approve the,
approve, yeah.
the applicant?
No, I'll second that.
Thank you, Shelley.
Sorry.
Thanks. Okay, all in favor?
Roll call.
Well, yeah, we'll do a roll call on this one.
Rebecca Hatt,
No.
Richard Silkman,
No.
David Bork,
No.
Michelle Stevenson,
No.
and Peter Freilinger.
No.
Okay, that one fails. All right, so closing items. It's pretty clear to, I think, all of us at this point, that this whole question about practical difficulty and standards and so forth is very vague, and I'm not holding my breath for the town council to amend the zoning ordinances to clarify this, so.
I actually think that we really need that to happen in order to.
Autumn, could you turn on your mic?
Sorry. I was saying, I actually think that we need to do that in order to like move forward on this, because otherwise we are acting as an executive body and creating an ordinance where there isn't one from a functional perspective,
Well,
unless we have legal advice in
There-
one direction or
There
another.
there is an ordinance, and we have to interpret the standards. That's our job. That's not acting as an executive, that's acting judicially.
But like in terms of interpreting what some of these mean when there's not case law to support it,
That's,
I feel like the range is so vast that it's not reasonable for us to undertake it without further guidance. And we certainly can if we're going to create like some kind of standard that we then publicize. But I don't think that, I mean, I have a hard time seeing that being the function of this body, generally speaking.
well, we are doing it whether it's formal or not. I mean, presumably, the next time an applicant comes into the planning department and they say, can we meet this practical difficulty standard? They're gonna laugh at them and say it's gonna be tough. I mean, you know, because we are setting the standard by our actions.
Yeah.
It would be, as I say, it would be nice if the town council would give us some parameters for what is a practical difficulty, but then don't look like they're gonna do it. And I think in the end, our job is really to obviously evaluate applicants that come before us, and we can't shirk it and say, we just can't do it, we have to do it, we don't have a choice. But I think it's also to help the planning staff a bit here and try to give them some guidance as to, what we're thinking about in terms of interpreting it. And the best way to do that might be through a workshop with some legal advice present, if the town's willing to do it.
My concern is that I think the area in between is so vast and our interpretation is so questionably consistent, particularly looking at past years potentially, that I think we're going to end up in court more often than we should, and we're going to spend a ton of taxpayer dollars on fighting lawsuits unless we actually take an action to be clear about what the standard is or isn't.
Rebecca, if I think to the MMA training that I've gone through, and if I think to also how that has come down to us, I actually think that's part of the intent of the legislature. They want us to interpret as best we can and see what annoys a property owner to the point of bringing it to the courts, and then the courts will make their decision, either agree with us or give us guidance and tell us to reinterpret. But the number of cases and the number of case histories in our MMA training for zoning and planning, which exist only in one town and which refer to only one interpretation of a variance, makes me believe that the legislature is kind of playing to see what merits elevation of the courts and to establish case law versus let's see what the towns do on their own. So I hear you on one level, but on another level, this has been the case, or this has been the way the state has handled this for a long time. So I'm guessing the legislature is and the governor, by signing the land use laws, is saying this is how we want to fine tune interpretations.
And if I can add.
Sure.
you mind? Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to add, and Rebecca, to your point on interpretation, and I know you're looking at the last few years as well, and I think it appears that everyone on the board is concerned with those inconsistencies and guidance, and I think that the workshop that is actually the next agenda item will be a really good opportunity to clarify those things, even if there's not case law, even if the state doesn't have a formal definition or council doesn't have a formal definition through that process, at least the board can gain clarity on how from that legal guidance, how something is typically interpreted, how something should be approached. I think having all of your feedback on your experience on the board, as well as Phil's input, our legal counsel, will be really helpful. So I think that will speak to that concern, hopefully.
And I do look forward to that. I think I would love to see us get really consistent and clear. And I know it's challenging for landowners when they come and they don't necessarily understand what the language that is clear here says, and then we're asking for that further level of guess the interpretation. And I think that's challenging, but
Well,
I appreciate all the work done to clarify that.
I think in the past too, that I don't know what went on before they get to us, but it seems like Brian did a heck of a lot, not saying that you guys don't. Telling them, you're not gonna, don't bother, you're not gonna get that, they're not gonna approve that. And, or you're gonna have to say it this way, and he would go over, before it even got to us, they're significantly less prepared recently than they have been, I gotta say.
Yeah.
So, and I actually think a lot of it is pretty clear. There's only a couple things that I think we need to go over: feasibility and the definition that's the state doesn't have about not economic injury, but the other one.
Yeah.
And, you know, the rest of it is kind of clear. The other thing is I can't say because we approved some home business baked goods, you know, in-home use to have that business, that the next person's definitely gonna be able to do it because we approved that one. Every case is so different
Can I?
since I've been on the board.
Just one second.
Yeah.
David?
Okay. Two things. When you go to MMA training, you know, for planning boards and ZBAs, they don't even talk about practical difficulty because it doesn't exist in most municipalities. It doesn't exist. Okay? So there are only some municipalities that have that as part of their ordinance. We're one of them. So we have to kind of rely on our history, you know, not what the state is saying. And as I look back at prior cases that we've had over the years, we've got a really good track record, not just for, you know, practical difficulty, but all variances. You know, the ones that we've rejected or even approved that have been challenged in court are very, very few. You know, we've got a great batting average here. So I think we do a darn good job. Do we make mistakes occasionally? Sure. Are they egregious? No, they have to be egregious in order for the court to overturn us. And I think we're trying to aim for perfection when close enough is really a reasonable way of looking at it. Keeping in mind, just as Shelley said, they're all different, and we have to really look at that. Everyone is different. But you rely back, you think back at what have we done in the past? What have we done in the past? I'm always looking at it that way, you know, because I can bring up a lot of examples. Yeah, I think it's going to help to have Phil here. And if you haven't met Phil yet, it's good because he used to be on the planning CBA. And so he's got a lot of experience being on a board, and that'll be helpful.
Certainly looking forward to it, and point well taken that, you know, we've done a fairly good job and that a lot of the standards are pretty clear and well defined. I do agree that there's a lot of ground that is clear. There are just those couple of things that I think are really challenging on every case, and it's hard to get it consistent without.
Really, we shouldn't
Deeper
have
understanding.
practical difficulty. We shouldn't have those.
Well,
I
that's
would
you know,
I mean, not saying they can't go through, we've approved them,
Grant.
but
If they say we're gonna have it,
We got it,
have
we got it. But you know, there was a case a while back with a Department of Conservation wanted to have an easement, and we granted a variance on the frontage issue.
Yeah.
But it was explicit because that was part of the goal of the town, was to get more open space and more conservation areas. So, you know, it shows, every case is different, and some we're gonna see one way and others will see other ways, so.
Yeah. And that's where I come back to the idea that I think that wide area of interpretation is not accidental. And if we want to have a very procedural set of requirements for everything, we are missing the intent of the legislature in giving substantial local power in land use law.
So Erin and Helen, you guys can arrange that for some time?
Yeah, so we actually added it to the agenda as the next item.
Oh, okay, I'm
And that we
sorry.
are looking to schedule a workshop with Phil. He said he was available on the date of the July meeting.
Great.
There's a couple options still on the table. We could either have it at 6 p.m. prior to the meeting, at 7 p.m. if there's no,
We do have that tabled appeal.
just because that one was tabled.
Mhm.
You know,
Because
And again, I
prior to the
will
meeting, we had
offer,
no applicants and they had met, the deadline was today in order to apply. So we were thinking there was no,
So there aren't any new applicants as of today?
correct.
Okay. So
I have the offer on the table. I will buy Amados. So
Peter, that's so kind of you, but you really don't need to.
No.
Come on.
no. It's we all do what we can for the town. Come on.
Is it
And I don't want pizza again.
Is it
I really-
possible to hear that one tabled matter and then move into workshop?
I think we tabled it so that we could hear from the lawyer. So it's possible we could,
Agreed.
I'll talk to the applicant. Maybe they need more time anyways. Maybe they won't be ready in July and then it could be
come to the
tabled
next
to August.
If I understand it, they've already appealed, to the.
Oh, no, that's
No,
a
that's a
different,
different-
Oh, it's a different one.
project,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, different one. Okay, okay. Confused because they were
It's
supposed to.
okay. The one with the raising the roof a little bit, we
Yeah, yeah.
tabled tonight.
Yeah.
I think we said July, but technically,
Yeah.
usually it's just tabled until
The
they
one
come
thing-
back.
I don't know if you can give them this advice, but if they would get a land use attorney to represent them, I think that would
Yeah.
help them tremendously.
I think everyone understands that attorneys are helpful and also expensive.
Yeah.
So people
They-
generally understand that those
If
are
they
always an
understood
option.
that, they would have had an attorney tonight.
Maybe.
Yeah, and the other thing is, architects are not attorneys and they're not fully licensed engineers either.
Right.
So yeah, I agree with with David on this one. I think a gentle nudge of them in the direction of a different set of expertise would be helpful
Okay.
for them.
Why don't
Please
you
stop.
follow-
We cannot discuss that
Yeah.
item. What we're discussing right now is
What-
if everyone is available at 6
Yeah.
PM.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Or
we'll
if
do
you'd rather wait till 7.
We'll
Oh,
do 6,
sure.
and if we have the agenda at 7, if we
Okay,
have to go over a little bit, we can just deal with that and then go back.
we
But-
could.
But why don't you check to see if they'll be willing to consider August?
August, okay.
All
So
right.
we'll hope for 6 PM for our workshop.
Yes.
Great.
I actually don't think I'm available at 6 on Wednesdays, but I'll pull a calendar.
Okay. Also, just as an aside, we heard that the last time there was a training, which I was not here in Scarborough for, that not everyone attended. So we're just going to push that everyone attend. It seems like we've been having a very lively conversation, both over email and at the different meetings. So I think it'd be helpful for everyone.
I think sometimes they say we're doing it this date,
Yeah.
not is everybody available
Sure,
this day?
okay.
And that's helpful, more helpful.
Yeah, so if everyone has the Wednesday at 7 PM blocked off, we could just hold it during the normal meeting time instead.
Yeah.
That works better.
Yeah, I'm available at 7, but not at 6. This is, wait, which July, what is it?
July.
Yeah, July 8th.
July
No 6 PM for me,
Okay.
sorry.
All right, so we'll double check with Phil. He said he would hold that date, but just to double check on the timing. Yeah, and then, we made a short list of the reasoning behind the training, but I think everyone agrees that it'll be helpful. So I've been making lists.
Excellent. Anything else for the good of the order? Oh, Motion to adjourn? We're all set. Thank you very much, Peter, for joining.
Thank you.
I hope
Well
Alberta is going well for you.
I'm America's best export right now.
Just bring back foreign currency. We need it. Damn Canadians aren't coming to Old Orchard, so we need.
I heard the tax freedom in Canada.
Take care, everyone.
Yep, bye-bye.
Including Canada, province.